What is going on, everyone? I have a very special video for you guys today. I have been trying to increase the number of collaborations on this channel because I haven't done them as much recently. With that said, today's collaboration is with Maddie Duke from ABA Technologies, and in today's video we discuss behavior analysis and social media. Specifically, we go into detail about a recently published article on social media. Alongside this, we operationally define some social media behaviors, as well as discuss the advantages social media has for practitioners if used responsibly and ethically. That is enough of me. Now let's get to know Maddie before we dive into the discussion. Maddie is a behavior analyst who works at ABA Technologies, where she works on their marketing team. Some of her duties include running the podcasts for ABA Technologies, such as Operant Innovations, which is a podcast for behavior analysts, and Boost You, which is a podcast for students studying for the BCBA exam. Maddie enjoys running the Operant Innovations Instagram account in addition to other social media accounts for ABA Technologies. Research-wise, Maddie has conducted research on cheerleading safety, diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations. Now that we all know Maddie, cue the intro. All right, everybody, I'm here with Maddie Duke from Operant Innovations. I briefly introduced her a little bit ago. We've been talking for a couple of months to set up this collaboration, and we're going to talk about social media and the article Scrolling into Trouble, but mostly social media. With that said, Maddie, why don't you introduce yourself briefly and tell everyone how we got to collaborate today?
Yeah, so like Troy said, I run Operant Innovations, which is a podcast and an Instagram account. And a couple of months ago, Scrolling into Trouble came out. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're pretty familiar with all of the disaster that was. And if not, you'll get to know some more about it in a little bit. But we started chatting about just how problematic it is and kind of wanted to do a collab, but schedules didn't align and things were going on and life and all of the things. So we're here now and I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, for those that don't know, it's been about like maybe 2 months of like
Mhm.
messaging back and forth. So I'm glad we've got here today. With that
Yes.
said, what were your initial thoughts on the article and then what jumped out to you?
So I really felt like the article was just a lot of mental gymnastics. It was like, we're going to go in this direction and we're going to say this is bad. And then we're going to backtrack and we're going to say that this is good. And um, I honestly, so a little bit about me personally, I grew up Mormon. I genuinely was like, I'm back in church. I am back. Like it was a little bit of a wild ride for me because I just was like, this is insane. Things like the big things that jumped out to me are maybe a little nitpicky or petty, but citations was a really big one. The number of times that you see Leaf as a citation, and specifically when you see Leaf as a citation when it's not the first author and it lists all of the authors until you get there and then it says et al or whatever. I think that's highly problematic. And like, why do you do that? That's not APA. And I had never heard of, let me get this correct, the Progressive Behavior Analyst Autism Council. I just think, why did we need a another certification? And if we're going to see one, why is it going to come from the Progressive or the Autism Partnership Foundation? Like, why is it not coming from APBA or another one of those organizations that we already know and trust?
Right, especially APBA, that is definitely one that we know and
Yeah.
trust. I kind of want to piggyback off what you were saying. Like, technology is here to stay. So some of the things that we're doing to try to shut it down aren't really possible. It's almost been selected through cultural selection, right? We have selected technology for our survival. We have, meaning we're not going to be able to shut that down. So I just wanted to add that there. Did you agree with anything when you were reading with the article? Because I know we said some negative things. Do you have any agreements that you have?
I genuinely felt like there were a couple of things that were appropriate to say. I think it's appropriate to talk about misinformation in the context of social media. I think it's highly inappropriate to then say that neurodivergent folks who are sharing their own experiences are spreading misinformation. That is you cannot make that statement. But I think it's appropriate to say we need to talk about misinformation. We need to be aware of that.
100%, I agree. And in that last video that I made with Brian, we talked about that. We said the bones of the paper was good. However, what you said was the huge red flag. If you were to criticize a portion of this article, what would that portion be?
Ooh, just one?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Just one, because I want to go into
Uh,
criticism after this.
okay. I feel like it probably would have to be the inflammatory behavior section.
Okay.
Like to talk about, they open the statement by saying the field of ABA has this long history of professional discourse, and they give some citations that I haven't read to be fully transparent. But like to not talk about what that discourse has looked like, and again, I haven't read their citations, my mind goes to previous harms that we have done and conversion therapy specifically, and to not talk about how these things happened and behavior analysts spoke out, clients and gay queer people spoke out, to just like make that statement and then say, but inflammatory behavior is always wrong. Well, guess what? When we were doing these harmful things for the queer community, you probably would have called people speaking out inflammatory, and they were doing so rightly.
No, 100%. I definitely agree with what you added there. That section brought red flags to me. One of my biggest concerns was if you read it closely. So I read the article like literally enough times to more than count on this one hand. So I reviewed it a lot. They mention out of nowhere while they're just talking, problems with people having large followings. To me, that just doesn't even need to belong in the article. Like you can't control
Yeah.
other people's followings,
Mhm.
but they mentioned it in three different sections. And one of them was in a section titled concerns. So it would kind of
Mm,
suggest that you are concerned with a large following, which is out of your control, technically. You cannot control who follows who. You can only control the content you make. That was one of
and
the
if they are wanting to control the narrative about ABA, wouldn't a large following be a good thing for the field? Like,
100%. They mention it out of nowhere, out of context. Like there's one in an ethics section. You don't need to talk about large followings in an ethics section. That doesn't even belong in there. But with that said, what are some legitimate concerns behavior analysts need to have or be aware of when navigating through social media? Because this is probably the most important question we're going to go over today, realistically. Like, what do we need to be aware of as practitioners on social media? Because I think that's what the
yeah,
paper tried to address in the first place.
right. So I think that there's kind of the like stereotypical ones, or at least the ones that were talked about in my ethics courses, which are things like confidentiality and making blanket statements, which I think that they did in the article, being prescriptive on social media about specific individuals. All of these things are problematic, and we do see them. So it is worth, talking about. But I think a big one that I I had when we were writing all of our notes, I had just seen a big video about this topic. And I was like, I think that this is really relevant and really problematic, and it's rage baiting. So that is creating content with the intent to upset people, which I mean, if we're honest, I feel like maybe this article itself is rage baiting. I don't know.
Right. The perspective matters too. Some people might perceive certain content as rage baiting, some might not. However, I definitely agree it is, problematic, especially when taken too far. There's
Yeah.
rage baiting and then there's rage baiting too far, going the extra
Mhm.
mile to do things. That's a very important topic. I like how you operationally defined rage baiting because I don't think any of us really know what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
So, with that said, do you have any examples of rage baiting? Or like, it doesn't have to be with ABA. Do you have any examples that you've seen for content in
Yeah.
general for rage baiting? Do you have any examples?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like a one that I saw in this video was like we're deciding that we're never going to wear shoes again, which of course people are going to have thoughts about because that's ridiculous. People also will do like intentional spelling errors. I think also you had kind of brought up in our notes, uh, talking about systems of oppression as possibly fitting the definition of rage baiting. And I think that's a different conversation that I would not apply the same caution to.
Okay. Kind
And
of
we can talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of going off that, I kind of related rage baiting to that because I think that I've seen content where a someone is trying to speak about a system to piss that system off. So I kind of just fit that definition that way. But now that you
Yeah.
separated it, I can kind of keep it separate. What do you think about that? Because I think that person is trying to access attention that they're not able to get. And from a behavioral perspective, that's totally normal. We want attention that
Right.
we can't get. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, especially in the context of social media, I think it's accessing attention, and especially in the kind of like first category of rage baiting where people are just being ridiculous for ridiculousness sake. Um, it's also accessing income, and it's related to people's ability, yes, to pay their bills. And I guess I respect the hustle, but I think it is problematic, especially I think when we think about the possibilities of where it could go. I think it's something to be cautious of and aware of. I also think kind of in the second category, it's I would assume I'm not somebody who talks a ton about systems of oppression, though I do want to shout out two of my favorite creators who do talk about them a lot, which is Jared Van Education and Carissa Knows Behavior.
That's funny.
Both.
I was thinking of those same two when you said the number two. I was like, Jared and Carissa are mine. That's
Yep.
literally what I
Yep.
thought of.
I love it. Yeah, they're both fantastic. And I think you put it perfectly that it's trying to gain attention from the system as well as from observers of the system who may not be fully able to, maybe tact is the right way to say it, who
Yeah.
are not fully able to tact what is going on, and therefore are unable to speak out or support in appropriate ways.
Before we go any further, a quick word from today's sponsor. Do you love behavioral science like me? Because if you do, my sponsor, Behavior Memes and Life of a Behavior Analyst, has a whole website full of products you might enjoy. From coffee cups to merchandise, the Life of a Behavior Analyst sells it all. I highly recommend that you check out my new product on my storefront. I came up with an OBM related design that says, "Hey management, it's not about the money, it's about behavior." If you like the design, you can get it on a coffee mug, a hoodie, or a t-shirt, you name it. All you need to do is click on the link in the description and it will take you to my storefront. Again, click on the link in the description, do it right now. With that said, let's get back to the video, and thank you Life of a Behavior Analyst for the sponsor. Okay, well now speaking of tax, we're going to go back to the article because I remember in your notes, we were talking about the zones of regulation. I want to
Mm-hmm.
hear your kind of perspective on that because I know the zones of regulation, there's always that argument behind not being evidence-based, etc. However, I saw what you
Yes.
wrote in the notes. This is actually something I commonly see used in practice, the zones of regulation. So I kind of want to hear what you have to say about it and the importance of children tacting their own behavior.
Yeah. So I wrote on page 5 of the article, they list that the zones of regulation is a pseudoscientific intervention. And I've actually, since writing this, had this conversation with several different people. And I think what somebody had brought up was that traditionally the zones of regulation are framed as kind of this thing that exists. Um, sure, I don't know if it exists. I can't see it. I can't observe it. However, I can teach a client to tact their own private events. And I can call it a zone of regulation. I can say, how are you feeling? Are you in the green zone or the yellow zone? And that just helps them to tact their own private behavior. I see no problem with that.
Neither do I, because especially when you're young, you don't know how to tact your private events. They just occur
Yes.
and they're just there. As you get older, you start to realize to slow things down, feel what you feel. I know that's not very behavior analytic, but you get in you start to
Mhm.
notice your own body. You start to actually
Right.
feel the things inside your body that actually do alter your behavior in the end. So, kind of going off that, we talked about tackling our own behavior with the zones of regulation. Now let's talk about how you said we can collaborate with other practitioners even when it's not a research-based protocol. Because let's say it's working, we're going to remove it just because it's not evidence-based.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can we can measure anything, right? So somebody can say, say we're working in a school and a school psychologist says, I want to try this, or I have tried this and it worked in the past. Great, let's do it. We're just going to make sure that we have an operational definition for something that we can observe, and we're going to take data on it. And if it works, maybe we want to kind of dive into, okay, maybe we can figure out why so that we can replicate it, but maybe not, because maybe we have other things to do and it's working and we're measuring behavior, and that's our job.
Yeah, our job is also to provide effective results. We're supposed to make an
Yeah.
effective change for the individual. And if whatever we're doing is working, why would we change that? An example I had brought up is nutrition. So, for those that don't know, I have a bachelor's in nutrition. So, when it comes to differing diets, we have the carnivore diet, the keto diet, your vegetarian diet. These differing diets, they can be used for anybody, but it has to work for you. Everyone is individual in their own way. So I've tried the carnivore diet. I can't do it. However, there are many people out there who are able to sustain that diet and achieve the results that they wanted because we're all different. And I think that kind of relates to this. If we're using something that is working, maybe we should continue using it because it's working for that person. It may have not worked for
Mhm.
someone else, but it's working for that person.
And I think that comes back to blanket statements as a problem. I hate when people make blanket statements so much, especially like in the nutrition space, where people are like, you have to do this to get this result or to be healthy. And I'm sorry. No, I don't. I have to do what's best for me. And maybe that's what's best for you, but everyone is different.
100%. And I want to kind of talk about blanket statements. I know that's not anything we've discussed before we actually recorded this. What are some blanket statements that you've seen maybe on social media in behavior analysis, if you can think of one?
Mm. Well, see, the first one that comes to my mind is reinforcement works, but that is factually true. What is a reinforcer may not be factually true. I do think, and this is maybe a little controversial, but people say that extinction is always bad, but extinction happens in the natural environment, right? Extinction, I don't know, when my light switch breaks, or like when my light bulb goes out, flipping the switch behavior is extinguished. Extinction's not always bad. Extinction is a process. It's not, it is often implemented in ways that are problematic, but it's not always.
Agreed. I mean, extinction is extinction. I think there was that article called Kind Extinction that came out to relay to practitioners there's a better way to implement this procedure. However, it doesn't
Mhm.
change what extinction actually does. I think the
Yeah.
problem was how it was being implemented rather than what is extinction down to the
Yes.
bones.
Yeah.
Kind of moving forward, what are we supposed to do with social media moving forward? One, this article was retracted, so there's still more discussions that need to be had. That makes sense. So I
Mhm.
guess we could have that to end here. What can we do moving forth as practitioners on social media to sort of shift our direction in the right way?
Well, I think continuing to have conversations, and also I think, I don't know your audience, I don't know my audience, but I assume that most people who are listening to this don't have large followings on social media. Heck, I don't even have that big of a
If
following
you're
that
in
I
behavior analysis and
yeah.
making content, you probably don't have that large of a following. It's really
It's true.
kind of what it is. Yeah.
But even for those who are not making content, continuing to have conversations and not letting these things die down and become just something that happened in history, but to be a current conversation continuing, I think is kind of the biggest thing that I would say.
Yeah, like I said, it's not going anywhere. It's pretty much the best way to network yourself or market yourself in today's world. My last question would be is how can practitioners use social media to get to the career they want, right? We always talk about how you want to enter the subspecialty of your dream. How important does social media actually play into that? Because for me, I never would have had any attention in OBM unless I started posting every day about OBM.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my personal experience. So what is your experience and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think following a variety of people is really important. I love following ABA in the wild, and I feel like I also am an OBMer, and so is she. But I feel like I learned so much from her, and I think just being curious. I think really with everything that we've kind of talked about today, getting curious about, well, why is this article problematic? Well, why am I interested in this? Well, why do I want to follow that person? Is it because they inspire me or because they, you know, add value to my practice or to my life? Or why don't I want to follow that person?
All right. Well, that's all I really have for today. Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you want to leave any last comments for practitioners around the world about social media, about anything else?
Um, I don't know. Um,
Okay. A lot of us don't know anything, so
yeah. I always tell people I'll be the first to tell you that I barely know what I'm doing. And I say barely instead of I don't know because I know something. And maybe that's a good thing to kind of remind myself and others of is don't just let the imposter syndrome kind of creep in and be like, oh, I can't make content because I'm not good enough or because I don't know enough or I don't know enough people. Maybe you barely know anything about making content, or maybe you barely know anything about behavior analysis, but that's enough. That's enough to get going and to get started. And especially if you get curious about learning more, I think that there's room for everyone here, whether you want to be a consumer or like just a consumer of content, or maybe you want to just repost content or tell other people about other creators, or you want to entirely create your own content. I think there's room for all of those things, and there's room for you, even if you barely know anything.
I want to share my personal experience going off that. For those watching this, when I started Behavioral Stories, my title was an inactive RBT who had just dropped out of school. And I started posting content every single day. I've created over 1,000 permanent products in the last 2 years, and the results do come in the end. You just have to keep going. You don't need a fancy title. You don't need to have the PhD. You don't need all that to post content. You need to take action. And I think that's kind of what Maddie was going with there. I appreciate Maddie coming on today. Operate Innovations, everybody. Go follow that page on Instagram. Do you have any other platform that you would like me to promote? Operate Innovations?
We have a podcast. So we are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I can send you the links to those.
Yeah, please do that. And I will drop the link in the comments down below.
Perfect.
My name is Troy, everyone. If you liked today's video, please smash that like button, subscribe to help the channel, and turn on notifications by hitting the bell so you never miss a video.